We decided to work with OKO primarily off the back of having seen them present at the Insight show a couple of years ago. A couple of my directors went along and were just really impressed by the level of experience from which they spoke. So the quality of insight that we felt as Sky we could get from them, it felt like they were just doing something a bit different to any other agency. And when I say different, I mean the impression that my directors got was that they felt that OKO could get to a deeper level of insight around customers and consumers than other agencies at the particular show that they were presenting at. I think what really impressed us around OKO's approach for our particular project was the bespoke nature of how they went about it. I mean, every agency claims to kind of craft something quite bespoke and quite different, but it genuinely felt like with OKO they actually took on board our challenge. They spent enough time to really think about what the nuances would be in our particular category, so in media, and they came back with a really well thought out and well reasoned approach that was fit. Well, it was a really good fit for the objectives and showed that they'd shown a really deep understanding of what those objectives were at a very senior level as well. And I think a lot of the times when we speak to other agencies, it can come across as quite surface level, but their approach was really detailed and showed that they'd understood the intricacies of the TV world and they tailored their approach to that. The experience of working with OKO was one of just being a sort of genuine trusted partner. At no point it felt like they worked very hard at sort of understanding the ways that Sky work, and as a result adapted their methods to that. Whereas with other agencies and in previous experiences that I've had, quite often sometimes the stakeholder feels like you have to adapt to the way that the agency works, and in this way it was very much the other way around, and that they spend a bit of time investing in how do things get done at Sky, and therefore how can they adapt their working method to get the most out of the project. So I think from start to finish it just felt like they embedded themselves within the stakeholder team as well as within the Insight team, and as a result things just ran more smoothly from there. We were able to explain why we have certain meetings and why we do certain things at Sky that perhaps they weren't necessarily used to, but they were able to adapt on the fly and be very flexible in their approach, and that made things a lot more stress-free for me. So from start to finish, when it came to working with OKO, I think the one thing that really stood out very strongly was just how they chose to communicate. They were able to flex their approach, whether it was on a more informal basis with me because we just needed to work out the logistics of a project, for example, to being able to scale that up to being very, very credible in terms of how they could communicate with a more senior audience. So I think that just comes from their experience. They understand that they are different needs and different approaches for different levels of organization. And as a result, everything that they did, whether it was communication, whether it was structure, whether it was just making sure meetings were efficient, was tailored accordingly to the different levels within the business, which was incredibly satisfying for me and comforting to know that I could put them into whichever room and be confident that they'd be able to adapt their style accordingly. When it comes to the quality of work and the proof being in the pudding, I think some of the feedback that we had from stakeholders within the business who had not had a huge amount of experience with research, and they were just blown away by the process. They said they'd had some light touch experience in the past and had perhaps never been fully invested in the power of research until they worked with OKO. And off the back of it, they just felt like they were so embedded within the customer insight that lay at the heart of the project that we ran. And the quality of the output, I think, ultimately is in the fact that all of the recommendations that OKO helped us to craft and deliver were immediately actioned within the business. And for myself, looking back sort of a year on from the project, I can look around the business and the outputs that we're producing on screen and justifiably point to the very insights that we uncovered in the particular project we ran with OKO. So I think that ultimately is the highest accolade you can give to the quality of the work. I think one of the things that really impressed me around OKO in terms of their knowledge and understanding was the fact that they were quite open up front in terms of their experience within the media and industry, in particular when it came to commissioning and acquiring of entertainment shows. But what they did is they showed a real thirst to understand the category as quickly as possible and get to grips with the nuances within it. They didn't have an ego about it, walking into the room pretending like they knew more than we did, which I really appreciated. So they were willing and open to learning about the industry, but then they quite clearly went away and also did their homework to make sure that they had the right context when it came to actually carrying out the project. And I think that sort of adaptive approach is really, really useful from an insight manager perspective, because you get the benefit of them bringing a fresh perspective to the problems, but also when the time comes to put them in front of a senior audience, you're confident that they have the context and the industry knowledge to be able to speak from a credible stance. at the end of the day, when it comes to it, the project has to deliver, and ultimately from an insight perspective, it has to lead to an output that you know is going to get action within the business. And I think one of the personal points of pride from myself on this particular project, and having worked with the OKO team, is I can quite justifiably point to this project and now look around the walls within Sky and on screen that are the screens that are being broadcast into customers' homes and see the impact of the work they've had. The project itself was run to very tight timelines, but at no point did I feel that OKO were not going to meet them. I think that is testament to the way they go about planning a project. They're meticulous in their detail, but also realistic. Their communication is excellent in terms of making sure that everyone knows what's required at certain points and what can be expected. And as a result, even though the timelines were tight, I always felt confident and relaxed that we would deliver against them, and the quality of the output has led to actionable results that ultimately consumers and customers can see on screen, and I think that speaks highest of all to the quality of the work that was delivered. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to use OKO again, and in fact, often we now look for opportunities to do so. I think one of the main reasons behind that is just the experience and seniority that they bring as a team. I think in the research world, there's obviously a lot of pressure on certain agencies and expectation to sort of blood talent through, which is obviously a good thing, but I think there are certain projects where you just want to know you can go to a trusted partner because they're going to have the right level of seniority. They're going to have the ability to grasp business challenges on an appropriate level, that they can walk into a room with your executives and speak credibly and knowledgeably. And I think that perception comes through in spades when you work with the OKO team, because ultimately they are all very experienced senior insight and research professionals. And that ultimately is why I would work with them again. If there was a big project that had a lot of nuance and I was worried would need the right level of strategic thinking and delivery on it, that's why I would go to OKO, because I could trust that they would put together a team, and the team that was available in the room and throughout the whole project would be of the right quality to deliver across all levels of the organization. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to recommend OKO to others. In fact, I've already done so to other insight and research teams across the business here at Sky. I think one of the main reasons I did so was because the work that they did was innovative and different in terms of the approaches that they used. They employed different methodologies I think were genuinely innovative, not just hanging off buzzwords that they felt a client might want to buy into. But more so than that, it was really just the well thought out nature of how they run a project. It comes across so clearly that they've done this many times at very senior levels, and when you combine that with an innovative way of thinking about and a bespoke method of planning projects, I think that's a very, very powerful combination for any insight manager to want to look into. I think one of the things that really stood out for me over the course of working with OKO over this particular project is they genuinely did feel like a partner from the start through to the finish. It was very comforting to know that on some occasions when I just needed to pick up the phone and have a really informal and quite frank chat with them, it felt like that was a very natural way to correspond with them and to have that chat. But at the same time, when I needed them to come in and be a really, really credible voice of the customer and really convey the strength and quality of the insights that they'd uncovered, I knew that they could do that with a senior audience. And I think being able to operate at both ends of that spectrum is a very, very powerful tool for them. And it's one that puts me at ease as an insight professional, because I know that when I need to be honest and upfront with them, I can be, and when I need them to deliver and relay the information and the insight in the best possible way, I can also trust them to do that. So from end to end, they do feel like a genuine partnership, and they were just fun to work with at the end of the day. I think the guys are great, the team is really, really open and honest, and there's just something in that where you feel like you and your research agency are a team heading into battle together. That's a really, really powerful and fun way to go about a big project.